I haven't been working. I've just been doing what I had to do. And I did this at home. This is the first conference I've ever attended on Corona, because due to principal reasons, I decided that I was not going to travel. Now, if I am here today, it's for a very special reason. 4 weeks ago, I don't know whether you saw the video released by the WHO, where they proclaimed that it was their intent to introduce mRNA vaccines for all vaccinations on Earth, and then go from there to treatment of all other diseases, including cancer, etc. And you may know that the first mRNA flu combined vaccine with corona has already been authorized. And there are major attempts to introduce this new mRNA vaccine against the flu this autumn worldwide. Switzerland has joined in, Germany is joining in, Austria is joining in. Now, at that point, my wife Karina and I said, we have to travel. And we have to try to get a message through that will be heard. And I'm going to get this message through now. And I need 15 minutes, that is all. What people do not understand is that all mRNA vaccines are dangerous and are going to threaten life. It does not matter whether the vaccine encodes for the spike protein, for the measles protein, for rubella, for the flu. It does not matter at all. Why? Because the whole danger of the vaccine stems from the ability of the immune system to recognize non-self. So, may we start with, oh, okay. I'm going to tell you about the danger of mRNA vaccines. And this I have done with my wife, Karino Reiss, who's also here, but taking care of the little one outside. Now, this is a cell, this house. And if a cell makes a protein, then fragments of that protein, it's like sawdust when you're sawing on wood, become exposed on the outside of the cell. You have the circle, the triangle, and the rectangle. These are small fragments that appear on the cell, always. There's no way to prevent this. It's necessary. Now, these fragments are recognized by your T lymphocytes. And your T lymphocytes, this one? Okay. Oh, dear. The T lymphocytes all look the same in your body. It's like marbles or grains of sand. But they are not the same. They have the distinct capacity to identify the different fragments. So you've got cells that can identify the circle, the triangle, the rectangle. And if this happens, then those T lymphocytes are going to attack the cell and kill it. These are the killer lymphocytes. Now, what is the meaning of all of this? 5 decades ago, the big question was, how can these receptors of the T cells recognize those different fragments? Do the fragments instruct the hands? It's like lock and key. The fragments are the keys and the receptors of the T cells are the locks. Do the keys instruct the locks to take them up? Or do the locks just evolve during development of the fetus in the mother's womb by chance? Because if the latter were the case, then we would have T cells that recognize self, black, and T cells that will recognize non-self, the reds. And this non-self is defined simply by the fact that it is not in the body of the baby. All right? And it turned out that that is what is the case. So during the fetal development and at the end of fetal development, a mechanism is put in place so that those T cells, those killers that recognize self, are silenced and kept silenced throughout life. That's why you're all sitting here. Otherwise, you would be suffering from autoimmune disease, and your T cells would be killing your organ cells. This does happen once in a while, but seldomly, rarely. But on the other hand, and this is the wonderful side of it, every baby that is born has killer T lymphocytes that are ready to react against non-self when this non-self protein is produced in the body. It does not matter whether it is corona or flu or measles or you name it, you have it. And so a baby is born with a team directed against corona. This might be corona. And when the baby gets infected with the first infections, corona, up jumps the team and goes into a bout of training. And during this training, the T lymphocytes, the locks get better and better. They fit better and better and better. And so the child in his next year can overcome the infection better because these T lymphocytes kill the baby's cells that are infected, and those are the lung cells, and that doesn't matter because lung cells regenerate. This is the big secret about immunity. Most of the organs in our body can regenerate, and wounds are healed. And then you have T cells that are stronger and stronger and stronger. That's why you're all sitting here and you never get seriously ill, because you all have a background immunity that is rock solid against all these respiratory viruses that come in, all of them. And it is known that we all have these T cells. It's been published, it's all known. It's just that no one reads the literature. What I'm telling you is none of my discoveries. I'm telling you what other people have discovered. So what happens when the T cell gets activated because the coronavirus has come in, or because the mRNA of the coronavirus has been injected into your body? Well, the T cells get activated, and when they get activated, they also activate their brothers, the B cells, and the B cells start making antibodies. And these antibodies will then be found in the bloodstream of vaccinated people. Now, what people don't realize is that these antibodies, if this is, blood, the antibodies are in blood. The coronavirus doesn't come into this room, into the blood. It gets into the hall through the front door of the hotel. And the antibodies are not there. There are no protective antibodies. And anyone who tells you this is lying. The body's antibodies that people find, the WHO, the CDC, the FDA, you name them, you have them, all these crooks. They take the blood of the patients and say they have and they are protected. Of course they're not protected. And this has been known for decades. So don't let people lie to you, guys. That's why, of course, you have all these infections coming in the vaccinated people. They can't stop the virus getting into the front door. But if the antibodies see the antigen, because that is in the blood, on the walls of the blood vessels, they will bind. And if they bind, they will mount attack via the complement system, which is the second killer system of the immune system. We have two killer systems. One are the T lymphocytes, the killer lymphocytes. The second, unknown, but even more powerful than the killer lymphocytes, is the complement system, which is the sister system to clotting. So if you activate clotting, the blood clots. If you activate complement, complement kills. Okay. Now, what is a horror scenario is that this is supposed to be a blood vessel. And you see the vessel wall in one, the inner lining of the vessel wall contacts blood. So anything that is in blood contacts the wall, right? And we know that these mRNA vaccines, all of them, are going to enter the blood in masses, in numbers that are unconceivable. You cannot imagine how many of these are going around in the body of all those poor vaccinated people, children, women. And the cells that they meet most and all the time are the cells of the vessel lining. So it is inevitable that each and every mRNA vaccine packaged in these lipid nanoparticles are going to enter the vessel walls, which is the tapestry, if there were a tapestry here, on the wall of this room. And then, this is number 2, you see the mRNA vaccine entering the vessel from the bloodstream. This is something that the virus can never do, you see. Number 3, the mRNA is in the cell. Number 4, mRNA causes production of that protein for which it's encoded. 4 and 5 is the attack by antibodies and by the killer lymphocytes on the vessel wall. And this is the end of the intactness of that vessel wall, wherever it is. What happens then is that you will have a trigger for clotting always, because whenever you scratch the vessel wall, you are going to be planting the seeds for clotting. And second, and this is why what is shown in 7, you're going to have leakage of those very vaccines into the organs. Now you have to realize, guys, that your vessel system is the most intricate system of tunnels in existence. And that system is completely, it's not possible. Large molecules and viruses can't get past that barrier. Your walls are sealed, actually. But if you go around making holes in the walls, then they get out. And then they get to the heart muscle cell and the brain cells and the liver cells and whatever cells that happen to be attacked. But because these packages are in the whole circulation, they reach all the organs of your body, everywhere. Now, this is a microcast of the microvasculature of the human brain, adult. Your brain consumes 20% of the oxygen of the body. And capillaries are so wonderfully, intricately integrated within the brain material. If each capillary is feeding, I don't know how many cells, but those cells are dependent on the circulation. If a clot forms in these capillaries, if something happens to the capillaries, those cells that are being fed are going to die. Now, you know how wonderful our brain is. Nature, God, someone gave it to the human being. And each area of your brain is responsible for something else. One is responsible for recognition, for memory, for movement, for your psyche, for empathy, for your personality. No one really knows where what is, okay? But I can tell you, dementia, Alzheimer, is associated with, very often associated with microclots and micronecrosis in the frontal brain. It's very typical. But of course, there's also an area that if you knock it out, you get jerks, Huntington disease, you know. So you cannot afford to clog any single capillary in the brain. If you do this, there is going to be consequences that are irreversible because the brain, the heart is similar, by the way. The heart consumes 10% of oxygen, and the athletes, you know, I saw tennis yesterday, then the heart consumes over 80% of the oxygen. And each of these capillaries in the heart is responsible for feeding myocardial tissue. And if that dies, it is the second organ that cannot repair the lesions. It's dead for life. Imagine. Now, we said over 2 years ago, it has to be feared that these spike proteins, of course, will be appearing then on the vessel wall, and that will seed the roots for thrombosis and for leakage. Can this be shown? Well, Let me tell you that there's a paper now in preparation by a very, very wonderful pathologist whose name is not mentioned here on purpose. He does not want his name mentioned. The paper is not yet published officially. What he found was something so startling and so unique that I said, I'm going to use this chance to show it to you. So what he found was, there was a man deceased after the 3rd vaccination, and no one knew what he had died from. And the pathology looked at his brain. And what he found was listen very carefully, multifocal means at many points in the brain, many. Necrotizing means dying and dead. Encephalitis. This is something that has been reported about 10 times in the world literature following infection by the flu, influenza. But never otherwise. This case is the first case where clearly it is not the flu, and it is also not corona. It is the spike protein, okay? Because he found on the endothelial cells of the capillaries. Now, Marguerite is also sitting here, Marguerite. He will say it's true. You know, capillary thrombosis is something that is not known in the brain. It doesn't happen. But here, it's the capillaries. And when they are closed, the cells die. There's no way to get out of this. No way. And what he found was that there is no nucleocapsid. This is the other virus protein that must be there if the virus were there. So it's not the virus, it's just the spike. And therefore it is caused by the vaccine, okay? There is no way to get around this. And in the brain itself, he sees neuronal death, 1, microglial proliferation, and invading T lymphocytes, number 3. So it's all documented. It is all documented. He has also looked at 2 hearts of patients, one who had died of acute heart attack, the other had died of aortic aneurysm, but he found the same things in the heart. And there again, he found spike proteins in the small vessels, in the smallest vessels of the myocardium, which you see here. He saw something that has never been described in pathology textbooks. Areas, yellow, of scars. These are cells that had died some time ago because this vaccination had been repeated, the booster. So the yellow are the cells that had died, and these are the scars that had formed already at death. But beside the scars, in the red part, that is the muscle, in the muscle itself, he found lesions, acute lesions, growing lesions, with lymphocytes that were obviously killing the myocytes. Z-band damage, meaning that these cells are going to die, and dead cells, that's number 4, fresh, just before death. Now, I don't care whether anyone is for the vaccination or against the vaccination. I care so much that everyone knows that these data are now there. And they speak such a clear language that it is not our job to fight anyone. I never fight anyone. I'm trying to bring the 2 halves of our society together again. Because, and I'm talking to the mainstream media, I'm talking even to the politicians, because the politicians have no idea of what they're doing. So let's not fight against them. Let's talk to them so that we all come to our senses and say, this cannot be allowed to happen. Even if the WHO says so, don't. And remember, and this is the last thing I want to say, the WHO is a private club, like a private football club. A club that is being financed, has been financed at the top by what? Bill Gates. Bill Gates is now number 2. Who is the top financier? Germany. The German taxpayers are financing the WHO and enforcing mRNA vaccination because, of course, it is the German companies that are earning most and donating. Now, people, I'm completely unpolitician, but I tell you, there are so many people who are still humans who don't want this to happen, not only to themselves, but to their friends, to their family, to their children. You can't do this. You can't let your children be vaccinated because they are changing mankind. All your personality is going to be changed. Your brain is being changed, and your heart is being weakened. Every injected mRNA vaccine is going to cause severe damage in our body and must be forbidden. Thank you.